Welcome to a new video in my home automation and Shelly playlist. And today I'm going to review another Shelly product, and this time this is the Shelly EM, which is here. This is an energy monitoring device, and we have seen some of the other Shelly devices that were also doing energy monitoring. But the way they worked is that the device that they were controlling, they were also monitoring the energy consumption of. So there was the Shelly 1 PM and also the 2.5. But this is designed to be only a sensor. So this is only monitoring power consumption, and it is monitoring power consumption using these split core transformers. These are also called the current clamp sensors because you open them up and then you put them across one of the main wires. So for example, you could put it across the main phase wire which is coming into your home. So with this device you would be able to monitor the entire consumption of your house. And this device is able to handle two of these sensors. So I have received two of them. One of them is a larger, so this can measure anything up to 120 amps, and the smaller one can do up to 50 amps. If I remember correctly, I have 3-phase and I think 21 amps each or 24 amps each. So even the smaller one is going to be more than sufficient for me. Well, I have 3-phase at the house, so I will only be able to monitor 2 of the phases with this device. And probably the other special features of this device is that it can also tell when the power was consumed or when the power was supplied to the grid. And because I have solar panels on the roof, the Shelly 1 PM would be able to tell me if I am generating excess electricity and I'm actually supplying electricity to the grid. This is pretty much what you probably have seen with Tesla Powerwalls, which also comes with an app, and that app shows whenever you were using electricity from a grid and when you were supplying electricity to the grid. So I'm hoping that this device will be able to do that. I just need to figure out which phase the solar inverter is connected to out of the 3 phases that I have at home, because I know the inverter is a single phase only. I know I said this device is a sensor only, but actually it is not true, because it also has an output, and the output is designed to control a special contactor. And well, these are basically just like big relays that is usually mounted within your distribution cabinet, and they can be used to like cut power for, let's say, your entire house or one section of the house. Unfortunately, I don't have such a contactor, so I think in this video I'm just going to be resorting to the actual power monitoring functionality. But of course, when we go through the settings and the different options, we are going to see how the contactor works. And as usual, let's have a quick look at the Shelly EM website as well. And as you can see in the sample images as well, because it uses a potentially high current transformer, it is capable of monitoring big loads in your house. So let's say the solar panels or a big cooling or a central cooling or heating system, and not so much like individual lamps or individual devices. Of course you can use that as well, but for that you wouldn't need a big current clamp. And it says 2 times 120 amps, so I was given a 50 and a 120 current clamp, but you can get 2 120 current clamp as well. So both of the outputs are capable of measuring 120 amps. And for some reason these features are white on white, but you can see that it basically does 2 times current consumption measurement, current measurement, energy, load quality, that's the power factor, and voltage as well. Of course, the voltage comes from the live and the neutral connections, because, well, the current clamp doesn't measures voltage. And the energy history monitor in the app is going to store the values for the last 365 days. I already talked about the wiring, but you can see it here as well. So that's the contactor output, which would go to a mains contactor, which I'm going to omit in my test. And if I scroll further, you can see that that shows the built-in website, just like with any other app. So you can monitor the consumption on the laptop as well, if you don't want to use your mobile. And just like with any other Shelly devices, I haven't turned the device upside down, but if you would do that, you would see these pin headers. So if you want to flash the ESP chip inside, you would be able to do that if you want to use a different firmware other than the built-in Shelly firmware. And of course, with all the various protocols that it supports, it would be possible to integrate it in any DIY home automation system. And finally, we can see the main specs here again. And quickly, I also want to go over to the shop so we have some ideas how much this device costs. So this is the European shop. You can see it's 50 euros with one of the 50 amp current clamps. So by default, it's already included one, so you have to purchase a second current clamp separately, and you can choose that to be 120 amp or there can be a 50 amp as well. And just to understand what other products are available, which is also power consumption monitoring products, is there is a Shelly EM, which, well, obviously, as it says, it has 3 current clamps and 3 energy monitoring. Of course, that is designed for a traditional, 3-phase European households, so you can measure all your 3 phases at the same time. But actually, there is also a Shelly 3 Pro device, which is again mostly on, designed to do power measurement, but it actually designs 3 rails. So that would be ideal to monitor like 3 main circuits in your house. Let's say your, lights, your sockets, and I don't know, maybe, the kitchen appliances or something else. So you really have all the choices here. So if you only need 2, you can use the EM. If you want all the 3 phases, that's the 3M, which is, it's a new product, so it's coming soon. And for 4, you have the 4 Pro, which on top of it, it also has a small display. So you can check these online. And just to look at the US store as well, it looks like that in the US only the EM is available, the other product is not, or at least not yet, and it costs $55.89 US. I've already connected the EM according to the diagram, and starting from the left, that's the easy, because the 2 current clamps, they have a lead, and then the end of the lead you have a black and a white wire. So the black goes to positive, so from one of the current clamp, I just choose the bigger one to connect it to P1 plus and P1 minus. So red to the plus, black to the minus, and then the smaller current clamp goes to P2 plus and P2 minus. Again, red to the plus and black to the minus. And I've also put a sleeve on a shorter piece of cable, which on the other end temporarily I'd only have a plug, so I'm just going to use it for testing purposes, and that is connected to the L as live and the N as neutral. And of course, with this type of European plug, I can't really tell which one is live and neutral, but since I'm not using the contactor output, this is not really a problem at the moment. And the O is the contactor output, which I'm not going to use. And I'm going to put the whole EM into this plastic box, mostly because even though these screws, when they are screwed, they are recessed a couple of millimeters in, but still some of these would have a live connection, so I don't want anyone to touch it. And I'm going to install the current clamps in my main breaker box, which has the, the 3 phases that are coming into my house. So I'm going to use on 2 of these 3 phases. And since it is a metal junction box, I'm concerned that the Shelly might not pick the Wi-Fi signal if if this box is closed. So I think for the time being, this is going to just hang outside. That's why I want this whole thing to be sealed, and so nobody would be able to reach it accidentally. Since the first part of this review, I think probably about a week has passed, give or take a few days. And the Shelly EM has been running in my main electrical cabinet, hooked up to 2 of my phases out of the 3 phases, and it's been measuring the power consumption. And I wanted to run this for a couple of days, so at least we have some meaningful data in the statistics. I don't know why I expected not to work, but of course it even shows on the website that the device can measure consumption and generation. Regardless, I was surprised to see that the device is able to measure the generation from my solar panels, which is connected to this particular phase that I have hooked up one of the sensors to. By looking at the data from the Shelly EM, I realized that the way my consumers are hooked up to the 3 phases of my house, it looks like that almost none of the consumers are on the phase where the solar inverter is, because if you see the statistics, most of the things are basically generation and hardly any consumption. So yeah, they're just funny. And I think actually there are a few, no, there is hardly anything. So it's mostly the solar panel, and then a few things which sort of like consume a small amount of electricity in the evening. And if I look at the other phase, then also it is not consuming a huge amount of electricity, although I think I usually see some peaks in the morning and in the evening, or maybe in the daytime as well. So I think these would be the range, the electric cooker that obviously runs in the evening where we heat some meals, or midday for lunch preparation, and sometimes in the mornings as well. I think probably this was maybe this was a weekend and my wife was preparing some soup, so I can see how much it consumes. But other than that, the consumption, like the hourly consumption, is fairly low. So I'm guessing it's probably the third phase where most of our consumption happens. But anyway, the EM only has 2 meters, so we can only see these 2 meters. And we have already seen the main user interface, so you can see the actual power usage. So there is only 3 watts being drawn from this particular phase, but you can see that it has the a lot of the energy generated by the solar panels, and you can just click on the number of days, and then you can see, I mean, this is probably that's today or the last 24 hours, and you can see sort of how it goes up. I think this today was overcast day or partly cloudy day, but then you see this is again, you see some peaks and then some troughs as well, and probably there was some clouds around, and this is probably like a proper day. My solar panels are not completely south facing, it's a little bit southeast facing. And you can look into weekly view, and you can see the generation. When you look at the data, for example, 6 kilowatt hours on this day, it's the amount of energy generated minus what is consumed on the same phase. And of course the blue part is just the pure consumption, which comes in the evening when there is no generation. If you click on the monthly view, you can actually see that, so today is the 8th, and this has been running since the 28th. So a little bit more than a month. Sorry, a little bit more than a week. So if you want an online way to measure how much your solar panel is generating, well, this is easy. Just connect it to the phase directly after your solar inverter, and it's going to measure just the amount generated by your solar panels. And of course, besides power consumption, it also shows voltage as well. But this is the data that you get out of the device. And of course, you have the 2 different inputs, so it shows up as 2 different devices. And if you go to the other one, you see the same statistics for the other phase or the other power converter. And as you can see on the other one, well, it's only consumption, so that shows up as blue. You see it's only blue graphs here. And but you are getting exactly the same functionality. And on the top, you are seeing the voltage. You also see the reactive power and also the power factor. And if you are setting up your Shelly EM and you are noticing that you are getting power generation, power energy return as opposed to energy consumed, then you just have the power converter hooked up the wrong way around. So you just have to unclip it and then put it back, basically rotate it 180 degrees, and that's it. And you have this main power switch as well on the top, and that's how you can control the output, which can control the contactor. And of course you have a power button on both of the both of these devices, but they are actually controlling the same output because there is only one output on the Shelly device. So that's it. Let's go to the other functions and the various options that you also see for the device. And I think some of them are going to be fairly similar. Some things that we have seen for the 1 PM or the 2.5. So if you've seen those videos, some of these is going to be repetition for you. The timer, you can set up auto on and auto off timers. So you can specify that this EM can shut off the contactor after a couple of seconds, the device turned on, or you can do the same with off, so it automatically turns back on. Again, it depends on the device that you have. You can also have weekly schedule, and I haven't enabled that timer here, but you can enable the timer, and then once you do that, you can set up schedules when you want the device to automatically turn on or automatically turn off. And as you can see, you can specify it by the hour and the minute, and you can also choose which day of the week it should happen. I'm not going to do this schedule, so I'm just going to disable it now. Going forward, the next one is going to be internet security. And the usual suspects are here. So we can see that it's on the Wi-Fi mode. So here you can see your SSID and the password. You can also set up a backup Wi-Fi on the second one. I'm just not going to open them up, so it doesn't show my Wi-Fi SSIDs. You can also set it up as an access point. Just like with any other device, this Shelly also creates its own website, so you can restrict who can access that website if you specify username and a password here, and you can enable or disable the cloud access. So because the data is stored in the cloud, I wanted to run it with a cloud access, so it backs up the data and I can see the consumption at any point. The next one is the actions. And here we can configure some local logic that the Shelly automatically does when, for example, if the contactor is turned on, it can call a URL, or when it's turned off, then it can also call a URL, or when the channel 1 power is above a certain wattage, then it calls a URL, or under wattage, it can call a URL. So this would be ideal if you are running the Shelly without a cloud, because then it can trigger other devices or call whatever URLs that you have. It can be another Shelly device, or it can be whatever custom device that you have, which can be controlled over HTTP. Once you are connected to the cloud, you can use the scenes as well. So that was the actions. Going along, the next one is safety, and here you can enable the maximum power protection. And again, this is the wattage power that when the device senses an excess power consumption, it's going to kill the contactor output, so it can protect your device. And just remember that we are going to have the safety option for the other channel as well, but there is only one output here. Application settings is, you can specify the load type. Again, this is for recording, and you can decide to exclude this from the consumption calculation of the room or the house. And I think this would be ideal in my particular case, because I have connected it to the main input of my, the phase coming into my house. So it is going to measure every consumption in the house. But I also have a 2.5, and that is also going to measure, whatever device that is connected to it. So that device's consumption is going to be doubled in the whole house or the room total consumption. So you might want to just play around with that. So maybe if you can have the Shelly EM to monitor your entire house, but then you just exclude it from the house consumption, so it doesn't get double counted by any of your other Shelly devices that are also measuring, dedicated device consumption as well. Or you exclude the others and then just use the EM. It's really up to you. Pin log is the usual functionality, and also even exclude this device from the event logging. And the last one is the settings, and now we can specify what the power on mode is going to be. So that's again for the contactor output. In the next one, you can specify what is the type of current transformer that you have connected either to output 1 or the the terminal 1 or 2. And so for one, I specified 120 amps, for the other is the 50 amp. You can update the firmware. Actually, I just updated it today. So there was a new firmware. You can set the geolocation, whether it be automatic or manual. If you are removing this data to a different house, then you might want to erase the data. So all the consumption logs are erased and you start from scratch. And you can also, factory reset and reboot the device and then get the device information, which could be useful if you want to figure out how well, how good Wi-Fi connection the device has to your, Wi-Fi. And you can rename the device and check the logo, which is appearing here on the top. And that was all the settings. And now if we move over to the other channel of the Shelly EM, then we are just going to see the same. I'm not going to go through all these settings again because they are going to be the same what we have just seen. Some of them are specific to the second channel, but the others are going to be just, you know, the same settings that you have that you set for the device, and they obviously apply to both of the channels. And to understand how you can use these devices in a scene, in a whole setup, let's go to the scenes and then let's just set up a new scene. So I'm going to click on the 3 lines and add the scene. And I'm just going to do a test in the room, and that's going to be the image for the scene. I just want to see what sort of triggers and actions this device supports. So on the when side, if I do add condition and I select the room and I select, I guess I can select either the EM or the, you know, the second EM, they are going to be all the same. So if I do that, I can create a scene whenever the contactor output is either turned off or on. For example, you configure the EM for the overpowered protection, which is automatically change the contactor. But here you can set up a scene, so when the Shelly relay is turned off, you can send an extra notification for yourself that, hey, something has happened, there was an overprotection trip on the Shelly EM, because that would just turn off the contactor. It's not going to send you a notification, but with a scene you can do that. And of course you can use the scenes as well to set up something that happens when there is an when there is an overconsumption or an underconsumption. And you would use this if you want to control another device. And the usual condition type, whether the scene should run one time repeatedly or any change. So this is the trigger side of the scene. I just picked the relay is on. Let's see what the Shelly EM can do on the action side. I think we can pretty much guess what it is, because it doesn't have a lot of output. It only has the contactor, and that's exactly what we can do. So we can either turn that contactor on or off, and also we can specify a delay. So you can have another device turn off the contactors. Maybe the Shelly EM through this contactor is controlling a pump, and you have another device which could be like a float switch or some sort of lever sensor, and then you will set up a scene to turn off the Shelly EM, which is going to turn off the pump when a certain water level is reached in the tank. So this is how you would use scenes and what you can use the Shelly EM on the when and also on the do sides of the scene. That was my review of the Shelly EM. If you like this product, you will find purchasing links in the video description. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.